Welcome to another edition of Buck What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Super Heavyweight. You follow me, I'll follow you back. And we are coming off of a victory over the Chicago Bears. And that was, really, for Bucks fans, it was exciting. First game. And before I get started, I'm going to introduce my guest in just a moment. Just being in Tampa and seeing everybody that's recovering from Hurricane Irma, and we see some of these other hurricanes out in the Atlantic and in the Caribbean right now. And my heart goes out to anybody that's been in the path of these dangerous hurricanes, and it's sad to see. And we really need to kind of put ourselves in their place. And I feel bad for the people as well in Florida that are still underwater, like Hernando County. So my heart goes out to all those people and any listeners I have that are in those areas. We are thinking about you. But let me jump in and introduce my guests. I'm going to start off with Michael Pless, my co-host on every week. Michael, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I mean, it's already we're rolling right along in football world. So already week 3 of the NFL. So I mean, the season is just going so fast, and it's already been really fun. I mean, a lot of good football out there, and our Bucs put up a good win against but hey, a win's a win, and we'll take it. And we got a tough test this week against the Vikings. So it's gonna be fun.
Most definitely. And tonight we have a special guest, and I want to tell you I really appreciate you coming on, Robert Rydell. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
All right. How you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm good. Doing great. Vikings 1-1, so a little bit less optimistic after our week 2 performance against Pittsburgh Steelers than Michael just was with your guys' Rams. It sounds like you guys came off one heck of a victory at Chicago, whereas we're sort of sputtering and hoping that our quarterback Sam Bradford's going to be ready to go this weekend to face what seems like is quickly becoming a high-powered Bucs offense and obviously very stingy defense as well. So we're excited, but let's call it tentative optimism at this point with Sam Bradford.
All right. And folks, if you get a chance, check out About the Labor podcast. I love football personally. I mean, I root for the Bucs, but I like getting different perspectives on different teams and different divisions. And one thing that I will say, podcasts I think are the way of the future. And I know I keep saying this, I sound like a broken record, but I would sooner listen to a podcast than I would some of the on-air personalities or some of the TV shows. Yeah, I get a better perspective listening to a lot of these podcasts, and it's much appreciated. So, you putting in the hard work, looking at the all 22, just like we do, just to get a better perspective. And, it makes the game a whole lot more fun.
Sure. Absolutely, man. It's I appreciate that. Yeah, I do my About the Labor podcast with my co-host Drew Mahold. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have new episodes out, and like you said, we're grinding just as hard as anyone else to get that content flowing and making sure that everyone has the opportunity to contribute their perspective and that type of stuff. So we have a lot of fun doing it. Happy to be here as well. You guys put out a great product as well.
Well, thank you very much. Michael, I'm going to jump over to you. I want to get your final analysis on the Chicago Bears game. Just a little overview before we jump into the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game that the Bucs needed to win. It's a game they should win, and they pretty much took care of business. I thought at first, there might be some rust, and due to the layoff that was, part of the hurricane and not having a game week 1, but they came out prepared and they were ready to go and really took it to the Bears. Defensively, they pretty much stole the show, caused 3 turnovers in the first half and pretty much took advantage of them and built a 26-point lead and by halftime. So pretty much just, took care of business and got done what they needed to and, played a pretty good football game. I thought standouts were Levante David and our linebacking core. They played outstanding. And Jameis Winston, he did what he had to as far as taking care of the football and made good decisions when he needed to. So just a good overall win, a good way to start the season. And now we go up to Minnesota and face a pretty good team that's well coached. So it's going to be a good challenge.
Yeah, most definitely. It'll definitely be a benchmark to see where Tampa's at. And Robert, I wanted to kind of kick this over to you. Kind of give us an overview on the Minnesota Vikings versus the Steelers. This will kind of give the fans an idea of where your team is heading into the game against the Buccaneers.
Sure. Like I said to you before here, when kind of during my introduction, the Vikings are kind of sputtering at this point. You saw against New Orleans week 1, the Vikings had a prolific offensive and defensive performance to some degree. They were every bit as dominant offensively as they alluded to throughout the offseason. Then you come into Pittsburgh, you have these issues with Sam Bradford's knee, and he ends up being downgraded to out at the last minute. Case Keenum's thrown onto the scene against Pittsburgh, and the Vikings don't even manage to get into double digits against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who obviously bring a lot of different looks defensively, very exotic defense. I mean, that's still as crazy of a defensive unit as it's always been. It's just not necessarily filled with the personnel of old, but they certainly give Case Keenum everything they could and more. The offensive line was, it looked like the project that it is, quite a bit more against Pittsburgh than it did against New Orleans the week prior. And the Vikings offense was sputtering. Dalvin Cook looked very good still. Everyone's pretty excited about him in Minnesota. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen continue to be great weapons on the outside and in the inside, both slot and as a split end receiver. So all of those things look good. It's just kind of a matter of, is Sam Bradford going to be healthy or not? And this team's offensive potential is built a lot around Sam Bradford's pedigree and what he's been able to accomplish with Pat Shurmur over the last year or so here. So it matters a lot. I would say, to judge the opinion of how Vikings fans are feeling heading into this next week, it's a lot on Sam Bradford's shoulders. And right now, we're not 100% that our QB1 is going to be ready to go on Sunday.
All right. And, just kind of talking about that, I know with your head coach, he's very cautious about players that have any type of injury.
Sure.
So if there's any inkling that there could be something that could prevent him from going full out, do we see him sitting down through this game?
I would say yes. I mean, based off of what we saw last week, Sam Bradford went out onto the field, tested it in Pittsburgh, got a chance to run around a little bit, and the knee, which has been, it's a lot of different things going on. Some people are saying it's a bone bruise. Some people say that it has something to do with scar tissue around the 2 ACL surgeries that he's had in the past. There's a lot of kind of question marks around there, but basically it sounded like once Mike Zimmer tested Sam Bradford out last Sunday and he wasn't able to go, he sat him down and put Case Keenum right in the game. So I wouldn't, I could see him doing the exact same thing again this week, if the knee continues to give him the same trouble.
All right. And, when you're looking at that game last week, and this will be my last question, I think we definitely want to jump into this week and what's going on. But what did you see that could have improved to really help the Minnesota Vikings win that game?
Well, a lot, like I said, a lot of it hinges on Sam Bradford. I thought the Vikings played well defensively against Pittsburgh. I thought they did a lot of the textbook Mike Zimmer stuff defensively. Good coverage on the outside. Xavier Rhodes was outstanding against Antonio Brown. He'll give Mike Evans all he can handle this week, I'm sure. The primary things that really needed, that were a huge issue last week that can't happen again this week, is, first of all, Trey Waynes on the opposite side of the field. You guys have another receiver that's pretty special in Deshaun Jackson as well. It's going to give Trey Waynes hell after watching Waynes get burned over the top 2 weeks in a row. So that's something that can't happen, can't continue to happen, especially against your Tampa Bay Bucs this week. And then also the quarterback performance just needs to be better. The protection needs to be better as well. That comes with it, but the quarterbacking needs to be. I think that if it is Case Keenum, for example, I think that he needs to be less cautious. He needs to step up in the pocket as opposed to taking his first step backwards, which is what I think got him into a lot of trouble against Pittsburgh last week. Something we've actually been talking about on our show this week as well. It's just simply his pocket presence is not nearly the same as Sam Bradford or Teddy Bridgewater, for that matter. So those are two things for me that really need to improve, with Trey Waynes on the outside and also the pocket presence of whoever the quarterback is. If it's Case Keenum, so be it.
All right. Michael Pless, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I was just going to add. I was going to ask you, Robert, if you felt like it seemed like when I was watching the tape for the Vikings, it just seemed like once Case Keenum was announced quarterback, it just seemed like the team kind of took a like just
took
kind
the
of,
wind out of the sails a little bit.
yeah, that's what I saw.
You're not the first one to make that point. I think to some degree, you know, like I've been saying here, Sam Bradford controls a lot of the destiny for the Vikings, and I think a lot of people are tied to, you know, his stock and his ability to take this team wherever they could potentially go. So I think, yeah, anytime you lose your starting quarterback, I can't remember who the coach was, but it was about 10 years ago when Peyton Manning was at the helm, right? And someone went up to him and said, hey, how come Peyton Manning's why aren't you ever giving your backup quarterback the reps at the quarterback one position? He was like, well, because if Peyton Manning goes down, we're screwed. And that's kind of the same position. That's kind of the same position that the Vikings are in right now. If Sam Bradford goes down, I mean, you guys saw Case Keenum in Los Angeles. You saw him with Houston. He's a sufficient quarterback that can manage, you know, some offense. But against a team like Tampa Bay, where you're probably going to need to be going shot for shot at some point, Case Keenum is a guy that we're pretty worried about in Minnesota. So I think that to some degree that rubs off on the players as well, because they simply, I mean, they know as well as us that there's one guy that allows them a lot of potential for victory and another guy that's, you know, going to make it a little bit more difficult.
All right. Michael, you want to follow up on anything?
Well, I mean, personally, I don't want to face Case Keenum because he's beaten the Bucs, you know, the last 2 years. So I'm kind of nervous about that. You know, I'm kind of hoping for Sam Bradford. I want to see the Vikings at their best. You know, I want to see that. So I think this is going to be a great test for us as far as the Bucs go. It's really the issue for the last couple of years is just they get one big win, and then the next week they just lay a stinker. So it's about finding that consistency, and I'm hoping they can take that next step and start turning the corner. But with what Robert said, as far as, I mean, anytime you lose your starting quarterback, I mean, that's just got to be a big blow, you know, to the team's confidence. And that's what I saw personally on tape. It just seemed like the Vikings defense was trying to play like pretty much perfect, and it led to some, you know, unusual penalties.
Oh, yeah.
This team doesn't, because the team doesn't do penalties. They're very disciplined. Mike Zimmer does a great job of having them in the right, you know, spots and making sure they're not committing stupid penalties like they were this past week. So characteristic things from them, and I don't expect to see that this week. I think they'll put a better performance, but it'll be interesting to see who's out there at quarterback. The difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into this matchup this week. Robert, can you tell us a little bit about your defense? That's what I've heard a lot about it. That's what I've seen. And I mean, when people talk about the Minnesota Vikings, they talk about the defense. And we'll get to the offense in a second, but I know that's what this team is built around, is the defense, from what I can see. And just give the fans, you know, an idea of who your top players are and how the rest of the players kind of fit in.
Sure. You know, Mike Zimmer's defense is his baby, right? I'm sure, like you said, when you think Mike Zimmer, when you think about the Minnesota Vikings, you think about his defense. And this defense is a 4-3 suit. Obviously, they're going to line up 4 guys in the line of scrimmage, and that's arguably the best 4-man front in the NFL. You know, you guys obviously, I'm sure, have something to say about that as well. But the Vikings have on their defensive line, you have 2 incredible pass rushers, Everson Griffin on the right side and Danielle Hunter on the left side. Both those guys are going to create a ton of pressure, collapse that pocket from the outside. And then waiting for you up the middle is Linval Joseph, who, as the Vikings like to say, is the strongest man in the world. He's a prolific nose tackle. He does a great job both kind of sifting through garbage in the interior there and also creating a pressure. So that 4-man front there, Tom Johnson will probably be the rotational guy at the 3 technique under tackle spot. All 4 of those guys do a great job of getting after the passer. At the second level there, the guys that really make that 4-3 front work well. Mike Zimmer does a lot of stuff out of the nickel as well that I'm sure that you guys have become aware of. Captain Munnerlyn departing from Carolina was a bit of a a little has kind of thrown a little bit of a wrench into it to some degree here. Mackenzie Alexander spent some time in the slot, along with Terrence Newman as well. And then Trey Waynes and Xavier Rhodes are your guys on the outside with Harrison Smith and Anderson Dejo over the top. The guys that you really want to look out for, like I said, that 4-man front at the top there, they're going to create the pass rush. Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks at the second level do a ton of stuff with that 7-up look, that double barrel over the double A gaps. They're going to create a lot of pressure and also be able to be, like Levante David, for example, are guys that can rush the quarterback, but can also drop back in coverage very well and make a good tackle and run defense or in one-on-one zone coverage, depending on what the situation is. So then finally, the wrecking ball is Harrison Smith. He's going to be all over the place. He's going to line up on the line of scrimmage. He's going to line up as a linebacker. He's a money backer to some degree. I think that calling him a free safety is kind of limiting his overall talent. I think he does so much more than just play zone coverage over the top, that he's able to come up at the line of scrimmage, really do some stuff with that 7-up look, and at the same time be just dangerous basically anywhere you align him. So that's 22. That's the guy that you want to keep an eye on for.
Hey, he's somewhat of a hybrid from what I can see.
Yeah,
you can't really put a title on him.
Right. The best way to imagine Harrison Smith is sort of a contemporary Troy Polamalu. He does a lot of the same stuff, comes up in the box and does a lot of the very similar stuff to what Troy Polamalu did during his heyday in Pittsburgh. So Vikings fans appreciate what he does. He's probably the biggest threat on our defense. Harrison Smith, safety, but Xavier Rhodes on the outside has become arguably a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. He's very important as well. So Rhodes, Harrison Smith, Everson Griffin, and Danielle Hunter, and then Linval Joseph are probably the top 5 guys, but Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks are no slouch as well.
All right. Michael, you wanna jump in here?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I mean, the Bucs faced a pretty good front 7 last week, but this front 7 that we're playing is probably maybe the best front 7 in the league because of what they can do with their front 4. I mean, they are very deep in their defensive line, being able to rotate in guys like Brian Robinson, and then also have a rookie in Jaleel Johnson who can come off the bench as well, who personally Real Bucs Talk was very high on. I thought look at him as well. So, I mean, they're pretty much loaded, and Harrison Smith doesn't get talked about enough. I think he's one of the better safeties in this league, and unfortunately, he doesn't really put up the stats wise, but I mean, he is a great football player. So, and then Xavier Rhodes, I mean, he just locks down receivers every week. I mean, pretty much just shuts down half a field, and it's Trey Waynes is struggling right now, but they have a lot of good pieces, and they make up with it because Everson Griffin, he gets back there so quickly. That spin move he has is very deadly. I'm definitely worried about him going up against Donovan Smith. So that is going to be an area of concern. We're definitely going to have to double, maybe triple team him at times. So it's going to be interesting, that front 7, how the Bucs counteract that for sure.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I really believe that Minnesota has one of the most underrated defenses in the NFL. Coming into the season, you just didn't hear anything about them. You may have heard a little bit if you're listening to NFL Network or whatever, but they never got their just due. And there are going to be problems for any offense they face. They are going to be big problems. So, on the other side of the ball, facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm going to revert back to you, Michael. And how do the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go up against this vaunted defense that Minnesota has?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the key for the Bucs offensively, I think, is going to be up to Jameis and how he gets rid of the ball quickly. I think you have to get the ball out of his hands and find a way to neutralize that front 7. Because the pass rush is gonna bring it. They're gonna be there. So you got to find ways to mix up your play calling and get them kind of moving and keep them off balance. I think that's going to be very big. And also running the football. I think we have to find a way to, it doesn't have to be 4 yards of carry, but we have to keep the rushing attempts up. I would like to see us run the ball at least 20 times just to keep the balance there and keep the threat of the run available as far as allowing you to do some play action. So you're just going to have to be able to mix it up. But I think definitely when you have your shots and if you can get a shot to take it downfield, you got to hit it. If you can get Deshaun Jackson, down the field, you got to make that happen. So again, it's just about isolating matchups and getting that ball out quickly. I would probably expect the Bucs to try to spread them out a little bit. And see if you can isolate some guys on one-on-one matchups, but it's tough because Minnesota does a great job of pretty much predicting or dictating what the other offense is going to do as far as what they scheme. They do a great job of that and really mixing up their looks.
All right. And, Robert, just I don't know if you know about, as far as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go, but, with Irma and with preseason and with some of the nicked up players that you saw, that I don't know if you got to watch any of the film,
Sure.
but this was the first time that you actually saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense and defense together collectively since like game 2 of preseason.
Sure.
So what you saw on Sunday was this team as they're just getting started, and
Right.
they're just starting to get comfortable with each other. And to me, that's a real positive. The way they played against the way Chicago played against Atlanta, I had expected a little bit more from Chicago, but Tampa was able to go in and start fast and handle business. And that's something, kind of piggybacking off what Michael was talking about. I would expect Tampa to get started fast because this Vikings team, again, you have to when you get a chance to get those extra yards or, get a play that get somebody that's open, you got to hit them because they'll shut it down real quick. So that's definitely something that, Bucs fans, we're going to be looking at. And red zone is going to be key again. Making sure that when you get down in the red zone, touchdowns are important, but I can understand, going for 3 if you really, really need to. So what I want to do is jump over to the offense real quick. And I want to go back to you again and just give me your thoughts on the offense and the key players on the offense. And I want to start with Dalvin Cook. I know here in Tampa during draft time and before draft time, there were almost fistfights regarding whether Dalvin Cook was going to be a Buccaneer or somebody else. And it was either the Dalvins and Dalvin Cook fan base and everybody else. And I'm telling you, if you were on Twitter and you were a Bucs fan, it was ridiculous because people were unfriending each other on social media over Dalvin Cook. And it just got that serious.
Yeah.
So,
dude, Dalvin Cook's a lot of fun. Like you said, he's a huge piece of this Vikings offense moving forward. The reason why the Vikings went out and got Dalvin Cook, right? So during free agency, they went out and got Latavius Murray first. Then they went and got Dalvin Cook with their highest pick in the draft this year. Obviously, they traded their first-round pick to get Sam Bradford last year. So you bring in Dalvin Cook, you pair him up with Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon, and you think, heading into training camp that Dalvin Cook is kind of going to be the rookie. He's going to sort of fall back on what Latavius Murray does to some degree. Murray's going to be your featured back. Seems some of Dalvin on first and second down. Who knows? But then over the course of training camp, Dalvin continued to get better and better and better and pick up the playbook well. He's pass protecting much better than he did at Florida State. And he took over the job from Latavius Murray, who was in the tub for the most of the summer. And that's kind of been the difference moving forward for Murray and Cook. So we've seen a lot of Cook moving initially this season. He's struggling a little bit catching the ball in the backfield, which is, a little bit concerning given what we saw him do at Florida State and how dynamic he can be when you're able to get him into the open field. And getting him into open space has been kind of an issue early on this season, but he is running the ball well effectively, both inside and outside. The way that the way the line has been rebuilt, it's a lot more athletic. These guys are getting to the second level a lot better, and you're seeing guys like, for example, Pat Elflein, who's the other Vikings rookie from the 3rd round out of Ohio State. He's running down the field, paving the way for guys like Dalvin Cook. So the Vikings are a run-first team. They always have been under Mike Zimmer. They're going to continue to try to run the ball, 20, probably anywhere between 25 and 30 times a game with their stable of running backs. So establishing the run is big. On top of that, on top of Dalvin Cook, then you got guys like Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen on the outside, and then again in the slot as well, that are making that run game easier to make it easier for the running backs to do their job. But like I said before, it comes back to Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford's healthy, it's a whole different offense. If Sam Bradford's not healthy, I would expect a healthy dose of Dalvin Cook on Sunday for sure.
All right. Michael.
I just wanted to add, like, what do you guys think of Laquan Treadwell? I mean, what do you think of it as far as his progress? I know it's been a little slow, but you think he's going to
Treadwell it depends on who you talk to with Laquan Treadwell. There are some people that are very high on Treadwell. I'm sure you guys probably have similar scenarios play out with your draft picks. But Treadwell was a guy where a lot of people in Minnesota wanted Josh Doxson at the time, and or Michael Thomas. A lot of the Ohio State Buckeye fans wanted Michael Thomas, and for obvious reasons. So you either really like Treadwell and you really believe in his cause, or you are starting to buy into the fact that he might be a bust because he's unable to create separation at the stem of the route, or you don't like him because he's too slow straight line, or whatever it is. I think a lot of Vikings fans are kind of monitoring his status because Michael Floyd does return after week 4 with the suspension, and that sort of depends. Michael Floyd would be the guy that would come in and play that X role in Pat Shurmur's scheme, if anything. So I think that people are optimistic. Myself, for Treadwell, I'm optimistic, but I also know that Michael Floyd can come off of the suspended list and do a lot of damage to the same spots. So to be quite honest with you, I haven't really given Treadwell nearly as much thought as I did last year.
All right. So when you're talking about Case Keenum, do you see him as somebody that can win you some games? I mean, based on what you and see. I know for Tampa fans, he was kind of a thorn in our side over the past couple of seasons. But, I mean, realistically, with the schedule that you have, especially the division rivals you have in Detroit, Chicago, and Green Bay, is he somebody that can get you wins?
You know, we hope so. He obviously, as a starter, he doesn't exactly have a prolific track record of winning football games. He's always been sort of a 500 quarterback and a very solid spot starter that can, manage the offense enough to get you some wins with solid defense and good running back play. So based off of the Vikings kind of script, what they try to do every week in terms of getting victories, you'd think that Case Keenum would be able to get them a victory or two, depending on how long Bradford is out for. But at the same time, like you said, they're playing some really tough teams right now. Tampa Bay, obviously, you guys are a good team. Detroit is a team that a lot of people underestimate every single year, and every single year they continue to blow doors out with their offense. Green Bay is Green Bay. I don't really need to preach for them, I don't think. And then obviously Chicago is getting a heck of a lot better. You guys found that out last week with the playmakers and weapons that they have, with Tariq Cohen being a real problem. Their defense with Vic Fangio getting a heck of a lot better as well. So I think that as a Vikings fan, it's hard to be optimistic looking forward with Case Keenum as the starter. The hope still, like I've been kind of saying this entire show, is that Sam Bradford's going to be ready to go, and we have a lot more faith in Sam Bradford moving forward than we do Case.
All right. So have you heard anything? I mean, just like local sports radio or anything that leads you to believe that he could start?
Yeah. I mean, he's been practicing in a limited capacity, so he hasn't been out. That's obviously a good sign. Obviously, when you get rid of the probable tag, and now all you have is the questionable or likely out, it's better that he's questionable for Sunday than out at this point in the week. There's some clips of him moving rather gingerly in Case Keenum getting the majority of the first team reps at practice today. So it's sort of a by-ear thing. We'll see what happens later on in the week. But right now it looks like Sam Bradford, I think most people would tell you that he's on track to start, barring another setback. And what I mean by setback is him testing it out on the field on Sunday, not being able to move as well as he would like, and then simply pulling the plug on it at that point. So this is going to be a game time decision as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Okay. And Michael, coming back to you, just listening to what he's talking about, how did the Buccaneers game plan for the starting quarterback, whoever that may be, throughout the week?
Well, I mean, I think you got to prepare as if Sam Bradford is going to play. You have to, you got to assume he's going to be the guy, and if he's not, then you just make adjustments if Case Keenum is in there. But again, the game plan is going to stay the same. You have to make the Vikings one-dimensional. You have to find a way to slow down Dalvin Cook and that running game, and try to make either quarterback try to beat you. That's a game plan pretty much every week. You try to stop the run, make the other team a passing offense and try to win that way. Force turnovers and play good on third down. It really comes down to third down defense. So, but yeah, I think they just prepare as if Bradford is going to be in there, and if he's not, then he's not. So.
And based on what you saw in the Chicago Bears game, how do the Buccaneers match up against Dalvin Cook and potentially stopping that run?
Well, Dalvin Cook's a different runner. I mean, he's going to look for contact. He's going to try to run through you, but he can also make people miss as well in the open fields. So, much different runners than what Chicago has as far as Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen. It's also a different scheme. They run a little bit more zone blocking. Chicago does as well, but Minnesota has the ability to run zone or power with their line and can really mix it up. And just Dalvin's ability to make quick cuts and then also very decisive with his running really makes him a special back. So the key is going to be our gap control. I think we're going to have to make sure we're in containment. And you're going to have to make sure you're fitting every gap and try to slow down Dalvin Cook that way and try to pretty much limit his options as far as where he can go with the football.
Okay. Robert, I want to ask you the same question, but just more or less for your team. When you think about Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans and the running game that you saw Tampa using the running game to kind of keep the play action option available. And, we haven't really talked about the tight ends, but we have a couple of tight ends here that, Jameis Winston, the quarterback, is very comfortable with. So, based on what you see, how do you see the Minnesota Vikings defense stopping them or slowing them down at least?
So how do I see the Vikings defense slowing down the Tampa offense?
Yes.
Well, okay, so like you said, the primary guys that you're trying to stop are, first of all, the quarterback, Jameis Winston. I'm a huge fan of Jameis Winston for what it's worth. For all your listeners out there, you guys have a heck of a quarterback, extremely charismatic, so much fun. He made Hard Knocks, for me, it just a very enjoyable experience because of the type of person he is. So stopping him is problem A, and kind of the number one way to stop Jameis Winston, as far as I'm concerned, is forcing him to go vertical and forcing him to pass the ball exclusively, like Michael was saying, make him a one-dimensional passer, and that's when he makes those, quote, stupid decisions that I know that down in Tampa Bay you guys are trying to limit this year. That's something that Harrison Smith needs to take advantage of. The Vikings are, despite what they've accomplished so far this year defensively, they are a defense that can force turnovers. I would say that forcing Jameis Winston into the type of situation where he's making a poor read or a poor decision, mixing it up with some exotic blitz schemes, that type of thing, is the number way to stop Jameis. On top of that, without Doug Martin in there, your running game, it appears, is fairly pedestrian. Jaquiz Rodgers and Peyton Barber, yeah, they're not exactly a dynamic duo as far as I'm concerned, based off of what we'll be seeing this season from other teams running the ball. So this is an opportunity now to get the Bucs when they're not at full staff, right? You guys don't have Doug Martin in there. We got to take advantage of that. We have to make sure that we're stopping the run. And what that means is going to be a lot of single coverage on the outside because you're going to be dedicated to stop the run. That's kind of what Mike Zimmer likes to do. That means that Xavier Rhodes is going to draw one of the most difficult matchups that he probably will ever face as a cornerback in Mike Evans, and then Trey Waynes and Deshaun Jackson going heads up on the outside is. That's a matchup that I'm personally very concerned about. I think that Trey Waynes has the potential to get beaten deep despite that 4.3 speed that we saw at the combine. I think that Xavier Rhodes is the type of guy that can, limit the damage with Mike Evans. I think he's still going to get his to some degree. He'll probably still catch 5 balls or something like that. It's a matter of whether he's catching 5 balls for 30 yards or 5 balls for 80 yards. That's kind of going to be the difference for the Vikings defensively, and then just simply being dangerous over the top, not allowing anything going beyond their safeties. And just keeping everything in front of them. And at the end of the day, hoping that you get into like a fourth quarter situation where Jameis Winston needs to make a quick decision, and you hope to have the right guy in the right position at the right time.
Yeah, man, you're spot on that.
I try to be.
For me, the X factor is going to be the coaching. As you know, Dirk Cutter going into his second year, it's going to be vital that he's calling the right plays at the right time.
Sure.
Jameis Winston he's a student of the game. So I'm sure he sees defenses, he sees certain things, and that will definitely help him. But this defense is like nothing he's seen, in quite some time. So this will definitely be a test for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I know for me, it is going to come down to coaching. I think that with the defense going up against the Tampa Bay offense, it's going to be a even match or a real close matchup. And it will come down to execution and play calling. Michael, you want to jump in here?
No, I agree. Like I said earlier, I think, keys, especially for our offense, is just getting that ball out quickly and try to keep their pass rush off balance. I think you have to mix it up with some draws and like screen passes, just different type of plays where you're just setting things up for later on in the game and try to get that play action pass going too, but also maybe moving the pocket as well to keep Jameis protected and also give him some time. But yeah, I mean, I think at times you could probably spread them out a little bit, but again, you got to watch the risk as far as leaving your tackles one-on-one with their pass rushers. So I think our coach Dirk Cutter has to do a great job of just keeping that balance as far as his play calling. And then defensively, I mean, it's going to come down to, I think, tackling, number one, and then also winning on third down. Third down every game. If you can win on third down, you have a good chance of putting yourself in a good position to win. So I think those are going to be some keys right there.
All right. And Robert, what are your keys to victory for the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, like you said, limiting the damage is probably key number one for me. You guys have some tremendous playmakers out there. So when I say limiting the damage, I basically mean no big plays. Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson need to be controlled over the top. That's kind of that simply can't happen. The way that, like you said, if the Tampa Bay Bucs are able to get off to a fast start against Case Keenum and the Vikings offense, that's dangerous territory. The Vikings want to be in a position where they can control the game with their defense. So that means essentially you got to control the clock, you got to control the tempo. What Michael said already, controlling third down conversions in red zone certain situations. You got to make sure you get 6 in those situations instead of 3. It's a lot of the same stuff that I'm going to say every single week in terms of game planning. But for this week especially, you can't allow the big play to be the difference maker, because with guys like Mike Evans and guys like Deshaun Jackson, you can take the top off the defense in a blink of the eye, and then it's a completely different game. So if you're able to neutralize that aspect of what Tampa Bay likes to do, I think you're in a lot better. You have a much better opportunity to win the game. I'm really concerned about your guys' linebackers as well. I really like Levante David. I'm admittedly a Cornhusker fan, so I love exactly what he does, being tremendous as an off-ball guy, as well as someone that can really make you pay in the backfield as well. And Quan Alexander is no slouch either. So basically attacking those linebackers at the second level with Dalvin Cook and getting after them, making sure that you're getting 4 or 5 yard carries instead of 2 or 3 yard carries that puts you in questionable third down situations. And like I said, continue to control the tempo and just control what's going on in the game. Make sure that the Vikings defense is, firing on all cylinders at all times, that they're not tired heading into that fourth quarter when Jameis can really make them pay.
All right. That was in the chat here, just kind of going through this, and the fans and quite a few fans have asked me to ask about Teddy Bridgewater. I know we talked about him off camera, and he's somebody that you can't help but root for this guy. I mean, what he was able to accomplish, and he worked his way through the system and everything, and then he has this catastrophic injury, and just to be able to come back from that type of injury to a place where you can actually run is phenomenal. So just kind of give everybody an overview of where he is and what you potentially see for him in the future.
Well, first things first, the way that I spoke about Jameis Winston earlier in terms of being a charismatic quarterback that you can really get behind, well, that's Teddy Bridgewater for Vikings fans. If you talk to pretty much any Vikings fan from really anywhere, they'll tell you that Teddy Bridgewater is the guy, that they love Teddy Bridgewater. There are a select few that are Teddy Bridgewater haters, but for the most part, everyone really loves Teddy Bridgewater, loves the narrative, like you said. He was supposed to be the Vikings Jameis Winston, right? He was supposed to be our franchise savior, the guy that comes in and basically erases the Tavares Jacksons of the world. but it hasn't been that way. Obviously, it's been out for just over a year now. I believe it was the anniversary of that prolific non-contact knee injury was about 2 weeks ago now. And it sounds like, from all accounts, that he's worked his way all the way back. I mean, when I was at training camp, he was crawling around on the ground like a sniper and pretending, he's just having some fun. That's the kind of guy that Teddy Bridgewater is, right? He lights up the world, and that's really what he does for Vikings fans. So most Vikings fans will tell you that they're really excited to get him back at some point this season. It sounds like he's going to be ready to go, that he's ahead of schedule. And if Sam Bradford's knee injury continues, I think that you could probably see him coming off of the PUP list and being, trotting out to the field under center with the Vikings by week 10. If this current trajectory keeps up with Sam Bradford's knee being an issue, Case Keenum not really getting it done, I can see the Vikings activating him after that 6-week limit, and then I believe they have their bye in week 8 or week 9, excuse me. So I think that week 10 is probably the highest potential for Teddy Bridgewater to make his return to the field.
So with Sam Bradford's history of injuries, do you see him as a long-term solution in Minnesota, or what kind of scenarios do you see for him?
That's the most difficult question in Minnesota right now. Who is the long-term guy? Is it Sam Bradford or is it Teddy Bridgewater? Right now, more than ever, it's up in the air because now you've got a guy with a knee injury in Sam Bradford who's going back to those grade 3 ACL tears that he had in his days with St. Louis. And sounds like Teddy Bridgewater might actually be the healthier option at this point in the season. A month ago, I think most people would tell you that Sam Bradford was the quarterback of the future, given that we didn't really know what to expect from Teddy Bridgewater. But now it's really up in the air. So I think to answer your question, to the best of my ability, is that I believe Sam Bradford has the potential to be the franchise guy for Minnesota if he can stay healthy. But the same thing can be said about Teddy Bridgewater, and it's going to come down to which guy is the better option financially and on the field for the Vikings moving forward. And I think that you'll probably get that answer, next summer. This isn't something that's going to be answered this season, I don't think.
Okay. Michael.
No, I agree with what Robert said. I mean, I think it's an interesting situation because, the upside is still there with Bridgewater if he can be healthy. I mean, the guy has a lot of talent. He showed it, he showed the potential, when he was playing. So, and again, that was at a time where they didn't have much around him. And now the weapons that they have are, I think, better. And I think the personnel and the coaching staff fits them more to a T now with his skill set. So, as far as Bradford goes, I mean, Bradford is really good when he's on the field. I mean, he's a very accurate quarterback. But again, I mean, 2 ACLs. I mean, it's just that knee is just kind of you're kind of waiting. It's a waiting game. He's kind of on borrowed time, if I can say that. I mean, so again, I think it's an interesting decision on where they go. But I think Bridgewater, I think, is where the direction they should go. If he's fully, 100%.
All right. And, just so we're on the subject of injuries. I know that Gerald McCoy was kind of nicked up with an ankle injury, and Quan Alexander had the hamstring. What have you heard about where they are right now? Will we see them? Will we see them on Sunday?
Yeah, I think they're going to play. Again, these guys are professionals. They don't really, practice. You like to see them on the practice field, but these guys can get through it without practice. I expect them to probably be out there in some type of limited form, and then maybe Friday be full go. But yeah, I don't expect them to miss this week.
All right. And one more question. Amazement 717. He was talking about Dalvin Cook. He was saying Dalvin Cook was a steal in the draft, but Beckwith's presence will be key for the Bucs versus Dalvin Cook. Do you agree with that assessment as far as what you've seen from Kendall Beckwith as part of a solution of possibly slowing down or stopping Dalvin Cook?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's going to take a collective effort to slow down Dalvin Cook. I mean, the guy is a special talent. Again, Minnesota traded up for Dalvin Cook for a reason. So, the guy's really good. So it's going to take all 11 guys to be, flying to the football and making sure we're in our run gaps and containing Dalvin Cook and making sure he's not getting to the outside where he's very dangerous. So, but yeah, I mean, Beckwith, as far as his play, I mean, he's been very surprising. At first I wasn't high on the pick, and he's really taken the next step as far as his development and has really become a pretty solid player and had a really good game against Chicago this past Sunday. So I expect him to continue to get better and hopefully can take that next step going forward.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. And Robert, if you don't know, I was against the pick of Kendall Beckwith. I watched his game film in college, and I just saw so many things, and I couldn't figure out what the organization saw in him. And then after hearing about what's going on in camp, and then seeing some of the plays in preseason, and just seeing how he's gradually improved to where he is now, I get on every week, and I promise that I will every day until the season's over, or every show, and apologize for being wrong on that one, because this guy's really up in his game, and he's really putting himself in a position to really be a leader on this team.
Sounds like you guys have a similar situation with Mr. Beckwith that we have with Ben Gideon, who's a fourth round linebacker out of Michigan that the Vikings took. And I think a lot of people, myself included, were not too thrilled about the Gideon pick, but they've seen him kind of progress through the system and play that hard-nosed style of football that we all like to see. And he's really changed some minds in Minnesota. So I actually like Ben Beckwith coming out of college. So I thought that he was a pretty solid player. I personally think that Levante David is going to be your key to stopping Dalvin Cook, just because of how good he is at covering running backs out of the backfield, running stride for stride, not losing a step when he has to pivot with them. But at the same time, I think that Beckwith is a really nice player and someone that you guys will be able to build around. I mean, that linebacking core has to, for a 4-3 unit, has to be about as good as you guys may have imagined. At this point in the season, you guys still have some very young players that can grow. I mean, Quan Alexander is impressive as well. So that 4-3 unit is becoming very, very stingy. Obviously, you got Gerald McCoy at the top too, hinging on basically being the guy. Who was a lot of fun, by the way, for the record, with Gerald McCoy. Love that dude. So, yeah, looks like you guys have it looks like you guys have what it takes to stop Dalvin Cook. It's a matter of executing at this point.
Well, let me ask you this: what did you think? And this is just kind of off the subject. What did you think of Hard Knocks? How did, from beginning to end, give me your thoughts on the whole series?
Well, honestly, I thought it was the best Hard Knocks in probably since the New York Jets Rex Ryan. With Darrelle Revis and whatnot. That was probably my favorite Hard Knocks heading up to this year, and I had kind of gotten off it a little bit, but man, like I said before, Jameis Winston was so much fun to be kind of the icon that you follow around throughout camp. He was, I mean, the Cribs episode that he gave to open up the season was hilarious. I mean, he was a lot of fun. I love Gerald McCoy. The whole thing with the refs had me rolling by myself. I think that Deshaun Jackson's he's a lot of fun just to kind of watch in a closed setting, because he is such an intriguing person. And he kind of oozes swag too, right? And he's a lot of fun to see kind of on screen. So I thought Hard Knocks was phenomenal. I thought that you guys, your team is built with a bunch of personalities that really make the locker room and the game of football as a whole just a lot more fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Not this was actually the first Hard Knocks that I paid attention to. And again, me being on the wrong end of history, I was one of those fans that was like, this is going to be a distraction. We don't need Hard Knocks here. Sure. This team has to focus on winning. And you know what? Just everybody that I've talked to, they talk about Tampa and Jameis Winston, and it humanizes a lot of the players.
Sure. Yeah.
And it really helps you to you can relate to some of the things they go through. So that's really, very much appreciated. Michael, did you have anything to add?
Oh, I mean, no, I love Hard Knocks. I've been watching it since it pretty much came out. So to have the Buccaneers on it was pretty awesome. And it just shows what these guys go through and that they are human, and, they have families and everything. And just the work they put in is really cool to see. And this is it's just awesome to get that behind the scenes look. And like Robert said, I mean, there's a lot of personalities on this team, and it makes it a fun bunch for sure.
Yeah. And Robert, this question is for you.
Sure.
Buck Nation is wanting to know about your video game collection behind you, and I've I've been focused on it. Every time you start talking, I'm like trying to look over and see what games you got back there.
You mean you're not focused on my elite sports analysis? Yeah, dude. So beyond sports, obviously, I spend most of my time doing sports. But my weird quirk is I like collecting old video games. So there's a lot of Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 games back there, and
there we go.
To give you my favorites, I'm a huge fan of all the Nintendo 64 games. Love the Mario Kart, Mario Party, those multiplayer vids, and then going all the way back to Super Nintendo. I'm a real nerd with some of those. So I've got a healthy collection back there, to say the least.
Yeah, I know. And somebody had mentioned that, and they're like, "Well, ask him about his video game collection." And I said, "Well, I gotta get that in before the end of the show."
Yeah, hey, I'm always happy to talk about my video game collection. No problem there.
All right. So, do you have any questions that anything that you were kind of wondering about with the Bucs, or you pretty much saw everything you needed to see on film, or anything that kind of stick out to you?
One thing I'm curious about is I'm curious what you guys think of Dirk Cutter and kind of like his era, I suppose, because from the outside, Dirk Cutter isn't a very flashy name. Obviously, the type of style that he brings, and he's been with Jameis Winston for some time, so there's some continuity there that works. But I guess I'm curious what you guys think in Bucs Nation of Dirk Cutter and just his ability to bring you guys to the promised land.
Michael, I'm going to let you go first, and I'll follow up.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, personally, I like what Dirk Cutter is doing. I think he brings both the best worlds. He's very aggressive, but he's also very player friendly. He's going to tell it like it is and keep it very upfront with players, which players respect. So I think the players like him, and I think he just demands that perfection pretty much, and players do everything they can to strive for it, and he's always demanding the best of his guys, which I respect. And he just really brings accountability, which this team hasn't had in a long time, and finally we do have that, and also stability. I think just the consistent message that he preaches every week is very good, and really getting these guys to focus in on what needs to be accomplished. But as far as the game goes, I mean, he's going to be very aggressive and kind of take it, push that metal to the pedal kind of thing. And job of staying on the attack. He really likes to get after it and try to really take control of the game. So I respect that from a coaching standpoint.
For me, Dirk Cutter brings balance. And just kind of giving you a history lesson, we can go back to John Gruden. After John Gruden, we had Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris was he was probably too player friendly, and it didn't bode well for him in the end, and he ended up getting let go. And then you usher in the Greg Schiano era, which was a nightmare. Yeah. I mean, you see what's going on in Ohio State. You know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But and this is a guy, Mr. Toes on the line, rushed the victory formation. And it was it was crazy just having that guy here. He's a horrible coach. So then you bring in Lovie Smith, and you still don't quite have that balance. But what you have with Dirk Cutter, everything that Michael said is spot on. But to me, I like the balance. I like the fact that he's a player-friendly coach. However, he will get in your butt if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Right. Case in point, second-round draft pick Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Comes into the season last season, didn't know the playbook. He gets sent home. Grown man sends him home. That's it. You don't know the playbook. Get off my field.
Right.
He's serious about winning, and that's what works well with him and Jameis is the fact that they want to win, and we just haven't had this culture. And you hear the word culture a lot, but for the Buccaneers organization, it's infectious to where it's getting to the fan base now. And the fan base is starting to really get on board with all this. And it all works together from the GM on down to the head coach, to the coaching staff, to the players. And I think that Dirk Cutter, firing Lovie Smith and bringing in Dirk Cutter has brought about stability and balance to this team. And I think you'll start to see it a whole lot more, as the season goes on.
I mean, I think he's a great coach too, honestly. Like I was saying before, I think that he's the type of guy who's not necessarily the flashy name. He's not the sexy coaching hire on the open market like Adam Gase to Miami, for example, was. But I thought the continuity aspect was really important with him and Jameis, where Jameis Winston, a young quarterbacks, you don't want him hopping from system to system to system like we've seen with Sam Bradford, for example. I mean,
Yeah.
how many times has Sam Bradford brought up throughout his career that he's had to switch, offensive coordinators every other year? He can't stand it. So I think it's really important to have that continuity with Jameis and Dirk Cutter. And, like we saw in Hard Knocks, he's a hard-nosed guy. I think that he actually works really well with your GM too. So I think that, I'm sure you guys don't need to hear this from me, but I think the sky's the limit in Tampa over the next couple of years, and that you guys are really building something special there. And, Vikings fans, we're concerned about what you guys are bringing this Sunday for sure.
All right. Michael. Michael, he may have froze up on us. No, I'm really excited, and I'm old school fan. I mean, we're going back to when Tampa was playing Chicago, playing the Vikings, when the Vikings would come to Houlihan Stadium, the metal bleachers, and you could bring a cooler with your lunch and stuff into an NFL game. That's what I remember about the division rivalry. And it's really nostalgic for me seeing the Minnesota Vikings now coming into or us going up to Minnesota to watch a game. And it just reminds me of back in the day when we used to watch these division rivalries.
Right. And I'm sure a lot of that black and blue division aspect that's sort of rubbed off on how Tampa Bay likes to play. At least from my vantage point, a lot of hard-nosed players, a lot of guys that are going to hit you in the mouth. It seems like you guys never really left, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, that's exciting. Michael, you there? Oh, okay. Oh, he's back.
Yeah, I'm here. I mean, as far as what I remember of the Vikings, I mean, just Randy Moss just dominating our secondary. So, Dante Culpepper, throwing it down the field 60 yards.
Get your roll on.
Exactly. And then, Robert Smith as well. I thought he was one of the most underrated running backs in the game. And, I mean, he would just run on us crazy games, especially up in Minnesota. The Bucs tend to struggle up there, back in those early 2000s and mid 90s. So, I mean, just some great games against the two teams, and a lot of good memorable players, especially when like Warren Sapp and I think and John Randall was still in the game.
Yeah,
that was awesome. Yeah, that was awesome to see. So
it used to upset me, man. I couldn't stand him, man. He would just it was awesome to see him inducted in the Hall of Fame. And Chris Carter was another guy that he always had the Bucs number as well. So a lot of great memories, a lot of great players coming out of the Minnesota area. So it's really, like I said, it's kind of nostalgic for me, just looking back and seeing where the Bucs are right now. So I'm definitely excited about that.
Absolutely. It's always fun to see great players like Randy Moss or Chris Carter or John Randall or whoever it is retire when you're on the opposite end of the spectrum, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, believe it or not, it's been an hour, and what I like to do towards the end, I'd like to get your final thoughts, and then we'll kind of get everybody out of here. So, Robert, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and I'm going to start with you and get your final thoughts.
Sure, no problem. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a blast. I'm going to pick Tampa Bay to win this football game. A lot of that hinges on the fact that I think that Case Keenum is going to be the starter for the Vikings on Sunday. I just can't, I can't confidently say that Sam Bradford's going to be ready to go, and my expectation is that it'll be Case Keenum. And for that reason, I've got Tampa Bay taking this one in Minnesota. I think that what you guys offer in terms of your front seven and Jameis Winston really taking it to the next level this season. I think that probably starts in Minnesota to some degree because this is only your second game of the year. So I think that the Vikings are going to be facing more than they can handle without their starting quarterback, and you guys will come out with a victory this week. I'm not a huge score prediction guy, but I'll say something like 26-20 Buccaneers.
Michael Pless.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for us as Bucs fans, I mean, what we're looking at this game, we just don't want another repeat performance of what happened last year. The Bucs get a big win in Atlanta, and then the next week they go to Arizona and lay an egg. So it's really about finding that consistency and starting to build a winning streak going forward and starting fast. September has been a rough month for our franchise as far as the Bucs go. Last couple of years we've been 1-3, so it's just about finding that consistency and pushing forward. And that the Bucs come out focused. Again, this is going to be a tough game. I don't think it really matters who's at quarterback just because of that defense is very good. And I think the quarterback, whoever they play, if it's Case Keenum, I think he'll be better than he was last week, just because of comfortability and getting his feet wet. So I would expect a good game regardless. I think the world of Mike Zimmer and his coaching staff. So I think it's going to be a tough battle. I also have the Bucs winning though, just because I'm a homer. But but yeah, I'm just really looking forward to seeing the Bucs come out focused and ready to play, kind of like they were last week, and start fast.
Yeah, and for me, I'm looking at this game, and I'm still not sure. That first game against Chicago, that was a great game. That was a good test. This is going to be the test to me, to kind of a measuring stick as to where Tampa really is. You get to run against a good defensive line and see what your running game's all about. You get to throw against some good cornerbacks and your tight ends against some good linebackers. So you're really you're really getting a measuring stick as to where you are against a solid team. And that's more or less what I'm looking for in this game. And I'm just excited for it. I can't wait for it to get here. I wish every day was Sunday so we can watch football all the time, but unfortunately it's not. And for me again, I'm picking Tampa to win this game 21-17. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game, but I do think it's going to be one of those games that comes down to some defensive stop on one side of the ball or the other. So guys, that's pretty much it for us tonight. Robert, please tell everybody how they can get a hold of you before we jump out of here. Oh, and from the people in the chat, they were saying thank you for coming on, and your input is very much appreciated. So thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, absolutely. One more time, thanks again for having me, guys. If you want to find me on Twitter, it's at Robert Reidell. My last name is Reidell. I write stuff, and I do some audio stuff and some video stuff for VikingsTerritory.com. It's kind of my home base. You can also check out some of my stuff on Bleacher Report. I do some freelance columns and whatnot for them as well. So big place on Twitter, Robert Reidell, Reidell. And once again, thanks for having me, guys. So I learned stuff here when I'm talking to you guys about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it's not just a one-way street of me, dropping knowledge on you guys either. I'm learning plenty of stuff hearing about your franchise as well. So it's been a pleasure.
All right. Michael Pless, my partner in crime.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me at Real Bucs Talk, realbucstalk.com. It's just, a site dedicated to Buccaneers football. So we try to keep it updated, and we're going to have some things on the Vikings game coming out later this week as far as matchups and what the keys are to victory. So look for that. And, we're constantly putting videos up. We got new videos up as far as highlights from last week. We're probably going to have some game tape up of Minnesota coming up later this week as far as, look for as far as what they present, especially that front seven. So, yeah, I mean, just it's football season is here, and it's going fast. It's already week 3, and it's rolling right along.
Yeah. All right, guys. Hey, thanks a lot. And remember, don't sleep on Minnesota. Minnesota is a very underrated team, but I think the Bucs are up for the challenge. So again, thank you everybody for checking us out, and be sure to check out or follow Robert, and check out Real Bucs Talk as well. And that's pretty much it for me. And everybody else have a good night.